May I, Mr. Chairman?
You may not. You may not.
I just want to respond.
Mr. Chair,
I don't
the time is out. We're done.
I haven't adjourned the hearing, and I don't think you're the chairman.
Mr. Chair,
Chairman's discretion.
I know it's your discretion.
We're going to let Mr. Kennedy.
He has had so much additional time.
Well, I think everyone's had additional time.
Why? Why are you doing that specifically for him?
Yes, why did Jim Jordan, head of the subcommittee on the weaponization of government, call RFK Jr. to testify about big tech and censorship and then give him a lot of time, in fact, more time than he was originally allotted? And then you hear Representative Stacey Plaskett, a ranking member on that committee, pushing him on that particular question. So we're gonna get into this hearing. First off, why the hell was RFK Jr. there? Because it truly felt, if you watched any part of this hearing, that the Republicans were rolling out the red carpet for a supposed Democratic challenger to Joe Biden and giving him a platform to spew some of the very suspicious anti-vax and arguably racist conspiracy theories that RFK Jr.'s campaign and sadly he has now become known for. But to give you like a feeling of how Republicans treated RFK Jr. as they called him to testify, here's Representative Chip Roy giving a very long preamble to the illustrious RFK Jr. And here's how he sticks the landing.
As a graduate of the University of Virginia, Mr. Kennedy no doubt knows the following quote: "For here we are not afraid to follow truth wherever it may lead." Thomas Jefferson. That truism was lost during the COVID pandemic. Individuals receiving scorn simply for asking questions. People being silenced for challenging the status quo. These are the kinds of questions that should have been publicly debated. And this hearing is focused on that truth, and we welcome Mr. Kennedy.
There you go. So that was, again, the end to a really long preamble, just sort of extolling RFK Jr. And specifically, Republicans are looking for some supposed answers to supposed questions that still exist about the COVID-19 vaccine. There you have it. I wanted to kick it before we get into specifics about what happened to Cenk and Mark about why RFK Jr. is being offered this platform by Republicans now that they're in charge, and like why, even though we know they're all vaccinated, they're still talking about how vaccine information is being censored.
Yeah, so look, why he's invited in the first place is maybe the best question. We'll get into his crazy controversies in a second. But Republicans are inviting a Democratic nominee for president because of a subcommittee on the weaponization of government? No, this is just a PR gimmick. Like, hey, let's get this guy on here. Let's get him to bash Biden while pretending to be a Democrat. That's the oldest trick in the book. Tucker Carlson, is the master of that trick. Oh, well, here's Tulsi Gabbard and Glenn Greenwald, and well, they agree the right wing is right about everything. Oh, well, lucky us, I guess, right? And so that's the trick that they're doing here. And plus, RFK Jr. has nutso opinions on vaccines that Republicans share. So they brought him on here just so the whole country will talk about it.
Yeah.
There's no legitimate purpose at all, at all. They never got to a purpose. They're like, oh, the thin veil is, well, I mean, did they kind of shadow ban one of his tweets? That's what we're having congressional hearings about? Really, really? So the Republicans are a joke. They're not passing any laws. They have no plans to pass any laws. They have no plans to help the American people. Every single hearing is a national embarrassment filled with lies and propaganda. So that's the actual synopsis of what happened.
And just to underscore, it was clear. Sorry, Francisco. I'm just going to say it's a political strategy, obviously, to carve up Biden more, which is what RFK Jr. does. And that political, it's a kind of trolling. And the other thing that is sitting here as a huge weight on the American discourse is big tech. So if you want to talk about censoring, I'd rather talk about breaking up big tech. That is a real problem, the power of big tech, but that's not what they're doing. As Cenk said, it's as though they've set up this whole hearing as a trolling exercise. And you've got RFK Jr., I don't know where he's been censored. As Cenk just said, he's been criticized, but he's been vilified, but he hasn't been censored. So I just didn't get it. On that score alone, It's lunacy, and of course they're not doing anything substantive. The whole thing is a troll exercise.
Are they going to bring Marianne Williamson on to do the hearings too? Oh no, she has progressive policies, so they won't be bringing her on for any hearings. Neither Republicans nor the Democrats.
And here's how Jim Jordan opened this entire hearing, spewing this kind of misinformation and referencing a tweet that was flagged for COVID-19 vaccine misinformation that RFK Jr. put out when Hank Aaron, who was 86, passed away. So take a look.
Hank Aaron, real person, great American, passed away after he got the vaccine, just pointing out facts. And yet the White House on the third day was actually 1:04 a.m. on January 23rd, 2021, 37 hours into the administration, they were trying to censor Mr. Kennedy.
Right, they were trying to censor it. They flagged this tweet. Let's take a look. Hank Aaron's tragic death is part of a wave of suspicious deaths among elderly closely following the administration of the COVID vaccine. He received the Moderna vaccine on January 5th to inspire other Black Americans to get the vaccine. I mean, this is utter COVID-19 vaccine conspiracy theory right there. That the elderly are dying from it. Hank Aaron, an 86-year-old man, didn't die of natural causes, which let's refute it because we have to. If you can't platform someone like RFK Jr., even critically, without saying that according to the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office, Aaron, considered one of the greatest all-around players in baseball history, died of natural causes. But RFK Jr. doesn't want you to remember that he wrote a book literally called like The Truth About Dr. Fauci. He doesn't want you to remember all of the things he did, like in June 2019, according to Time, he visited Samoa, appeared alongside anti-vax activists. Later that year, a measles outbreak resulted in 83 preventable deaths, most of which were in children under 5 because of the poor uptake of the MMR vaccine. Despite the deadly outbreak, Kennedy wrote a letter to Samoa's prime minister and deflected blame from the anti-vax movement, instead suggested that the outbreak was due to a defective MMR vaccine. Oh no, I'm not against vaccines. I'm against the vaccine you were trying to. Anyway, bye, off to the other country. Here's what RFK Jr. said on the stand to Jim Jordan and the rest of Congress about how he has never been a vaccine denialist.
I took flu vaccines for 20 years straight. I have never been anti-vax. I have never told the public avoid vaccination. The only thing I've asked for, and my views are constantly misrepresented so that the truth of what I believe is not, we're not allowed to have a conversation about that with the American people, which I believe vaccines should be tested with the same rigor as other medicines and medications.
Except they are, and he's once again spouting lies and using this congressional hearing to do that in front of all of the American people with the help of the GOP. Once again, who has cost their own voters their lives by fomenting this exact kind of misinformation. RFK Jr., I won't go into it, has a long history of associating vaccines with autism and on and on and on. But you guys, I mean, it's 2023. We're still technically in a global pandemic, even if Joe Biden has said it is over. We still have no safety guards and guardrails against the next pandemic. No research being done, and this is the platform that this man is given.
Okay, I don't know why he's lying. It's a curious lie since he's legendarily against vaccines. But I can refute it right now with personal experience. I knew RFK Jr. Well before he decided to run. I've known him for probably about a decade now, and he has always been against vaccines. And he asked me to put together a segment on TYT where he could debate scientists on vaccines. And I tried. I couldn't find any legitimate scientist who was willing to debate him. They're like, we don't want to platform the guy. It's absurd conspiracy theories. And okay, well, you could agree or disagree about the conspiracy theories on vaccines. You'd be wrong if you believe them, but that's okay, that's okay. But what you can't argue is that he's been in favor of vaccines before. That's just not remotely true. I just don't even understand why he's lying about that. Like that's the one thing he's famous for. And I guess he thought, oh, well, I'm at 14 points in the polling because my last name is Kennedy And I guess these voters don't realize I'm a Republican or something now. And it's complicated. He's not just a Republican, right? But on these issues, he's very right wing. And so maybe I'll just pretend that I've always been in favor of vaccines and maybe I'll accidentally win. I don't know what he's thinking, but that was not remotely true.
Yeah, he's a complicated guy, and his political philosophies probably don't match up with any of those GOPers that are in that hearing room. But on this one issue, they can spark to what he's saying. It's, there's some nuance to RFK Jr., and oftentimes the nuance is lost. One of the things he, has said in his media tour, which is so, I think he's been so widely platformed that it's laughable to me that he's on this, he's in this hearing room about censorship. He's one of the least censored Americans I can think of in the last year. But one of the things he talks about is the lack of rigorous testing. As you just suggested, there was rigorous testing on the vaccine. There haven't been longitudinal studies on the vaccine because they were trying to deal with things in a pandemic. So reasonable minds may be able to disagree about this, but the positive effects of the vaccine and saving lives, I think, are indisputable. And the fact that this guy claims censorship, sadly, that's just not true, I think, if you just look at the last year.
Look, guys, it's not clear that he's just a right winger, just a left winger. He doesn't fall into those camps. And I'm glad I corrected it and Mark did a better job of correcting it. But he hides behind nuance. So like that Hank Aaron tweet is a good example because he's a lawyer and he's actually used to be a pretty good lawyer. And so he doesn't say the vaccine killed Hank Aaron. He says Hank Aaron died right after he took the vaccine. I didn't say it killed him, right? But brother, where are you going with that? You put out that tweet so you can get people to think that he died because of the vaccine. You do your little lawyerly nuance, but everybody knows where you're going with it. Everybody knows you're against the vaccine. And again, to Mark's point about you're censored, now everybody's seen that Hank Aaron tweet more than any other tweet there is. So where's the goddamn censorship? This whole thing is theater, and it's just to try to hurt Democrats. That's the only point.
And during this, Elise Stefanik basically tried to get him to comment on the Hunter Biden laptop and was like, didn't it sway the election? And he was like, I don't really know about that, but I'm pretty sure it did. So you see the way that RFK Jr. is being courted by the right so that there is no more, oh, he's a little this, he's a little that. No, they're using him just as much as he's using them in order to, again, get people killed, but only specific people. You guys, I don't know if you've been following RFK this week, but we began the week with RFK Jr. Saying this during a private dinner about COVID-19, that it was actually formulated potentially, just asking questions, but potentially as a bioweapon that actually is easier or is more easily evaded if you're an Ashkenazi Jew or Chinese. Remember this?
COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials among different races of the receptors, of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Oh God! So the people who are most immune because it was ethnically targeted. Again, this is part of his wild conspiracy theories, not just about the vaccine now. Now we're talking about COVID itself. I don't have to remind you how that plays into all kinds of anti-Asian Wuhan lab leak, spliced with some anti-Semitic Jews control everything kind of tropes there. But here's what he said, because he was called out on this by Democrats in this hearing. Here's what he had defended himself. He never said anything racist. Here he is on the stand.
And by the way, I want to say this while I'm on the record, that in my entire life, and why I'm under oath, in my entire life, I have never uttered a phrase that was either racist or anti-Semitic.
But you kind of suggested that Jews and Chinese are immune because COVID was designed explicitly to spare them, which like isn't exactly like saying a bunch of slurs, but it's definitely leading people to the water and they can drink and do all the hate crimes for you. Just before I can get to you guys, I do think that lawyer Maya Wiley, who was was testifying, was a witness for Democrats basically on this committee hearing. She put it very plainly about why it's so dangerous to even utter and to float those kinds of conspiracy theories, as if we need reminded.
When you make a statement that suggests that based on race, based on religion, based on anything other than facts, that you may have somehow not been targeted, but other racial groups have, that by definition feeds into something very dangerous in this country that is actually impacting lives.
Yeah, it's gotten people killed. But anyway, guys, it's not racist. It's just a bioweapon that was designed to pass over certain races.
Yeah.
And religions.
Yeah, okay, so this is exactly the kind of lawyerly nuance horse crap that I was referring to earlier. Now the big defense is, no, there was a study and then it showed that maybe it doesn't affect Chinese people and Ashkenazi Jews as much. And so he's just innocently pointing out that study and he didn't imply anything. No, you saw it on the tape. He said it is ethnically targeted. He definitely implied that it was meant to attack Caucasians and blacks and skip over Chinese and Ashkenazi Jews. So we can have fun with it and ask, what did the Sephardic Jews do wrong? What happened to the Mizrahi Jews? Why did they not get the memo? But you can't say the Chinese came up with this, it's ethnically targeted, and by the way, the Jews also skipped over, and go, what, anti-Semitism about how Jews run the world? And how they are responsible for all this stuff? Golly gee, I've never heard of that. Is that what I was implying? Wink. Get out of here, man. That's as anti-Semitic as it comes. The problem, it's a giant disappointment.
It lands just that way that Cenk is saying. That's the problem with it. Okay, I'll give it to you. RFK Jr., you're not an anti-Semite, you're not a racist. But when you say things that land cleanly in those communities, you've got to own it. At a time that the COVID-19 outbreak, having come from China, it was already producing incredible anti-Asian crime, violence against the Chinese community. Add to that, record anti-Semitism over the last 3 years. So this is outrageous that you would say anything, even if you're not racist and even if you're not anti-Semitic, RFK Jr., be sensitive to the tripwires that produce the violence against those communities. Otherwise, I've got to question your motivation.
Yeah, I am not nearly as generous as Mark. That is, every conspiracy theory rabbit hole ends with the Jews did it. And for him to throw in the Jews along with the Chinese, when it came from China, is outrageous and feeds into the worst anti-Semitic tropes in the world, let alone the attacks against China, saying they targeted us ethnically. It's disgusting.
He's not a medical doctor. He's not a scientist. He does not know what he's talking about. None of that holds water. So like, he wants to debate actual like virologists. He wants to debate actual scientists, and good on them for turning him down because they need to actually debate and talk to someone who is their equal. RFK Jr. is a grifter. He had a cool past, good for him, but man, he's fallen down this rabbit hole, and Republicans are happy to use him.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.